It was a blistering summer afternoon in 1971 when a group of oilfield workers, trudging through the sweltering marshlands along Interstate 45 near League City, Texas, stumbled upon a grotesque scene that would forever alter the course of history. Nestled amidst the reeds and cattails, half buried beneath the muck and mud, lay the decomposing remains of a young woman, the first of many victims to be discovered in what would come to be known as the Texas Killing Fields. News of the grisly find spread like wildfire through the small town, sending shockwaves of horror and disbelief rippling through the community. For years, whispers had circulated about the sinister happenings in the marshlands, tales of vanishings and unsolved murders that seemed to linger like a curse upon the land. But it was not until that fateful day that the truth was laid bare for all to see. The Texas Killing Fields were real, and they harbored secrets more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. As authorities descended upon the scene, the true scale of the horror began to emerge. The body of the young woman, barely recognizable beneath the ravages of time and decay, was just the beginning. Over the course of the next few weeks, more bodies would be unearthed from the depths of the marshlands, each one a chilling testament to the brutality of the crimes that had been committed. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the investigation into the killings proved to be a labyrinth of false leads and dead ends. Suspects came and went, each one more elusive than the last, leaving investigators grasping at straws in their desperate search for answers. As the body count continued to rise, fear and paranoia gripped the community, casting a pall of darkness over the once idyllic landscape. Parents kept their children close, and residents avoided the marshlands at all costs, fearing that they too might become victims of the mysterious killer or killers who stalked the Texas Killing Fields. In the years that followed, a litany of suspects would emerge in connection to the killings, from transient drifters to local criminals with a history of violence. But one name in particular would come to dominate the investigation: Edward Harold Bell, a convicted sex offender with a violent past. Bell, who had been linked to several of the victims through circumstantial evidence, quickly became the prime suspect in the case. His name was whispered in hushed tones among law enforcement officials and concerned citizens alike, as rumors swirled about his possible involvement in the killings. In the years that followed, a litany of suspects would emerge in connection to the killings, from transient drifters to local criminals with a history of violence. But one name in particular would come to dominate the investigation: Edward Harold Bell, a convicted sex offender with a violent past. Bell, who had been linked to several of the victims through circumstantial evidence, quickly became the prime suspect in the case. His name was whispered in hushed tones among law enforcement officials and concerned citizens alike, as rumors swirled about his possible involvement in the killings. But despite mounting suspicion and public outcry, Bell vehemently denied any involvement in the murders, maintaining his innocence even as the bodies continued to pile up in the Texas Killing Fields. And with no concrete evidence to tie him to the crimes, authorities were left with little choice but to continue their search for the elusive killer or killers who haunted the marshlands. Edward Harold Bell was a complex and enigmatic figure whose troubled past and criminal activities made him a central figure in the investigations surrounding the Texas Killing Fields. Born on October 6, 1939, in the small town of Matagorda, Texas, Bell's early life was marked by instability and tumultuous family dynamics. From a young age, Bell exhibited signs of behavioral issues and aggression, often getting into trouble both at home and at school. His family life was far from idyllic, with reports of domestic violence and neglect casting a dark shadow over his formative years. As Bell entered adolescence, his behavior only seemed to escalate, culminating in a series of criminal charges ranging from assault to theft. Despite these run-ins with the law, Bell managed to evade serious consequences for much of his youth, often slipping through the cracks of the justice system due to a lack of evidence or witnesses willing to come forward. As Bell entered adolescence, his behavior only seemed to escalate, culminating in a series of criminal charges ranging from assault to theft. Despite these run-ins with the law, Bell managed to evade serious consequences for much of his youth, often slipping through the cracks of the justice system due to a lack of evidence or witnesses willing to come forward. By the late 1960s, Bell had developed a reputation as a troubled and volatile individual, with a penchant for violence and erratic behavior. His criminal record continued to grow, with charges piling up against him for a variety of offenses. In the years leading up to the discovery of the Texas killing fields, Bell's life took a dark and ominous turn. He became increasingly isolated from society, withdrawing into a world of his own making, where his darkest impulses were allowed to run unchecked. In the late 1970s, Bell emerged as a prime suspect in the Texas killing fields case, with investigators linking him to several of the victims through circumstantial evidence. Witnesses came forward, claiming to have seen Bell in the vicinity of the marshlands around the time of the murders, and his name quickly became synonymous with the horrors of the Texas killing fields. Despite mounting suspicion and public outcry, Bell maintained his innocence, vehemently denying any involvement in the killings. He was never formally charged in connection to the murders, and the case against him ultimately fizzled out due to a lack of concrete evidence. However, Bell's troubles were far from over. In 1999, he made headlines once again when he confessed to the murder of 11-year-old Debbie Ackerman, a crime for which he was eventually convicted and sentenced to 70 years in prison. Despite his confession, Bell continued to deny any involvement in the Texas killing fields murders, leaving the case shrouded in mystery to this day. Edward Harold Bell passed away on April 28, 2019, taking any secrets he may have held about the Texas killing fields to his grave. To this day, the true extent of his involvement in the case remains unknown, leaving investigators and armchair sleuths alike to speculate about the identity of the elusive killer or killers who haunt the marshlands of League City. As the years turned into decades, the mystery of the Texas killing fields remained unsolved, a dark stain on the collective conscience of the community. Despite numerous arrests and investigations, the true identity of the killer or killers responsible for the murders remained a mystery, their motives and methods lost to the sands of time. Today, the Texas killing fields stand as a grim reminder of the fragility of life and the depths of human depravity. The marshlands, once teeming with wildlife and natural beauty, have become a place of sorrow and mourning, their waters stained with the blood of the innocent. But amidst the darkness, there is also hope that one day, the truth will be uncovered and justice will be served for the victims of the Texas killing fields. Until then, the echoes of silence that haunt the marshlands serve as a solemn reminder of the lives lost and the mysteries that remain unsolved. If you liked the video, do give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you for tuning in.